As someone who's been playing classical guitar for over a decade, I've seen 5 major mistakes that most beginner classical guitarists make, and even advanced classical guitarists. So in this video, what I want to do is I want to go over these mistakes, how to fix them, and I also want to talk about how this is going to improve your playing. Now, I'm Andrew Segan. I'm the founder of Classical Mastery, one of the world's biggest online classical guitar schools, as well as Acoustia.com. But enough about that, let's get into the first classical guitar mistake. Now, the first major mistake that I see beginners make all has to do with their right hand position. Now, this is really important, especially if you're starting off with classical guitar. The way you position your hand with classical affects your playing a lot because it affects how you're actually able to pick on the strings. For example, a lot of people will place their wrist flat, almost down on the guitar like this, and when you do this, it puts your fingers in a real bad position. Because then you have to pluck a lot with the nail, not with the meat of your finger, which is going to give it that warm tone. So you want to make sure that when it comes to your right hand position, you're always above the guitar, you're not laying your wrist flat on the guitar, and you're coming at the strings on an angle. Now, this is really important because when you put your fingers over the guitar on an angle, you're able to pick with both the meat of your finger and the nail. If you pick just with the nail, then what's going to happen is going to sound really naily. But if you pick with both the meat of your finger and the nail, well, then it's going to sound a lot better. Now, the second classical guitar mistake has to do with your tension. Now, this actually applies to all areas of guitar as well. A lot of people, and you're probably not at this point if you're watching this channel, you probably have been playing guitar for a little bit, but what a lot of people do is they press really hard on the guitar strings. Now, what this is going to do is even though you're pressing harder, it's not going to make the note actually sound clear. It all depends where you are actually pressing. Now, when you're applying tension to your classical guitar notes, you want to make sure your fingertips are as curled as possible. And by curling your fingertips, it's going to allow you to actually hit that specific part of the guitar fretboard with a lot more accuracy. See, a lot of people have these flat fingers and you're not able to accurately press on the guitar fret. By curling your fingertip, it's going to help you out. Now, a lot of people will kind of have their thumb over the guitar fretboard like this, but by putting it behind the guitar fretboard, it's going to help you have your fingertips, which are a little more curled. So this is the second kind of major mistake that I see people making, is they're not applying the right amount of pressure. Now, that could also be not enough pressure, but more common than not, they're applying too much pressure and just not having the right left-hand technique. All right, so the third mistake that I see guitarists making is uneven tone. Now, the way to fix your tone if it sounds uneven isn't probably what you think, especially when it comes to classical guitar. Usually your uneven tone, which is when, one note's going to sound super dull, one note's going to sound, maybe a little more thin. It usually has to do with your right hand, and usually has to do with your right hand nails. Now, I've said many times when it comes to classical guitar, you can have a little bit of nails. I don't like to have, nails on my right hand, but the main thing is whether you have short nails or long nails, you want them to be even. Because if one nail is longer than another nail, what's going to happen is you're going to hit it at a different angle. Now, also thinking about your left-hand nails, you want to make sure that there's no rough edges or anything. I like to file my nails when it comes to my right hand because you want to make sure you get out any of those edges. Because if you have any sharp edges on your right-hand nails, then what can happen is it can actually get caught on the guitar string. So you want to make sure that your left hand and your right hand is trimmed when it comes to your nails. Your left hand's also important. I've seen guitarists have really long left-hand nails. And what happens is if you have long left-hand nails, you can't curl your fingertips because your nails kind of stop you from being able to press on the guitar fret. So the third mistake that I see a lot of these guitarists making is they have this uneven tone. So you want to make sure that your tone is very, very similar when it comes to all your notes. And the way you're going to do that is by having left and right-hand nails, which are filed. Now, the fourth mistake that I see guitarists make is skipping rest strokes with their right hand. Now, what is a rest stroke? Well, a rest stroke is when you're actually plucking one of the notes and you pluck into the following string. Free stroke is the other picking technique with your right hand. That's when you pick into the air, and rest stroke's when you pluck into the following string. Now, rest stroke is something that you need to use at very specific points. You don't always want to use rest stroke because when you're using rest stroke, what happens is it's a lot louder. And it really makes those notes, stand out. So you want to make sure that you're only using it when you want notes to stand out, but you want to make sure you are using it. A lot of times you want to use rest stroke when it comes to these melody notes, because by using it on the melody notes, like I said a few seconds earlier, it's going to make those notes really stand out. If you're not using rest stroke and you're using free stroke, A lot of times those notes can get lost. And when it comes to classical guitar, you want to make sure that your melody, your accompaniment notes, and your bass notes can all be heard separately. You want to make sure that melody is not getting stuck with your accompaniment. All right, mistake number 5 is not learning songs correctly. When it comes to classical guitar, you want to make sure you're breaking up songs into many different steps. Now, by doing this, it's going to make the learning process so much more easier. For example, in classical mastery, what I like to do is break up every song into at least 5 different steps. And I have students learn each different step well before moving on to the next one. For example, there's this very, very famous classical guitar piece called Lagrima. It sounds like this. So if you're going to learn a classical guitar song like this, it could be any classical guitar song. The first way you can break something up is just by learning the melody. So you take this and just go. And this is also going to help you really have that ear for the melody as well, which is going to help you play the song better. After you do that, then what you can do is add just the bass in. Then after that, you can add in the accompaniment note, which would sound like this. So you can break up songs so many different ways. Now, it doesn't always have to be, learning the melody, learning the bass, and then putting everything together. You can split up songs, many different ways. Sometimes, one of the steps might just be, okay, this time we're just going to work on increasing the speed. This time we're just going to work on the next section. Splitting a song up into 5 different parts could just be actually splitting the song up, not just taking individual lines and then learning those lines. But you want to make sure you're making the process as easy as possible for yourself. Now, we go over this in a lot more detail in my full classical mastery program, which is my A to Z classical system. Now, classical mastery, we teach using a very specific 5-step song learning process. And we give people the option to learn with tab, which is something that really isn't seen in the classical guitar world. Now, we have songs all the way from starting to play your first song to, Asturias in these high-level classical pieces. If you're interested in that and you want to learn classical guitar, then I want you to check out the description of this video to get a special offer for the classical mastery program. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one. Make sure to subscribe down below because we post every single week.